My name is Matilda Savage. I was 14 years old. My father walked into my room and said coldly, "Your mother is dead. Stop acting like this house still belongs to her ghost. The baby needs a real room. Pack your things and move to the storage room tonight." My stepmother stood behind him, filming my face the entire time, smiling. She zoomed in on my tears, on the concrete floor, on the water heater where I would sleep from now on. Then she sent the video to the family group chat of 12 relatives with the caption, "Time to grow up and make space for the real family." I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I simply started packing. What they didn't know was that by humiliating me on camera and throwing me into that storage room, they had just triggered the exact trap my mother had prepared for them 6 years ago. 58 minutes later, a car they never expected pulled into the driveway, and their perfect little family began to fall apart. If a 14-year-old quietly fighting back is already pulling at your chest, please take a second to like and subscribe. It really helps these kinds of stories find the people who need them. And drop a comment with your city and what time you're listening from. I love knowing where you are. Now let me take you back to a Thursday in April. To understand why a Thursday in April unwound my father's whole life inside 90 seconds, you need to know about the wall above my bed. My mother painted 3 words on that wall the week before her diagnosis became terminal. She used pale blue, the same color she used on the kitchen trim and the porch railing, the color of a sky that was about to clear. The words were, "You belong here." She wrote them in her own handwriting, slightly slanted, careful, the way she signed her name on birthday cards. She died on June 15th, 2020. I was 8. The cancer had moved into her bones by then, and the only time I cried during those last weeks was at the hospital, when she made me promise not to cry. After she was gone, I slept under those 3 words every night for 6 years. By the time I was 14, I had touched the chipped B in Belong so many times that I had thinned the paint down to the drywall. It was a small worn-down spot the size of a thumbprint. My thumbprint. Every August, starting the year she died, a plain envelope arrived in our mailbox from a building on 10th Street. Social Security Administration. It came on the same week each year. My father opened it in the kitchen, standing up, and never let me read it. When I was 12, I asked him what it said. He told me it was for grown-ups. He said it the way someone says, "Don't touch that," about something hot. I remember the August 2025 letter was different. The envelope was thicker. The return address stamp was green, not the usual gray. He didn't open it in the kitchen. He didn't open it at all. He carried it into his office and pushed it to the bottom of his desk drawer, the one where he kept things he didn't want to look at. I watched him from the hallway. He didn't see me. He didn't see most things by then. My grandmother Joyce lived 45 minutes north of us, in a small house she kept perfectly clean and almost too quiet. Until my father remarried, she came every Sunday. She brought a casserole. She braided my hair. She let me water her tomatoes. After Brielle moved in, the Sunday visits got complicated, which was the word my father used. By the spring I turned 11, Joyce was visiting once every 3 months, and only on weekdays, when my father was at work. The summer I was 11, she drove down for one afternoon, took me to a diner with red booths, and put a folded piece of paper into my hand across the table. The word on the paper was Daisy. The handwriting was hers, but underneath the word, in smaller letters that I would not see for another 3 years, my mother had written a list of rules. "You don't ever have to say what's happening," Joyce told me. "You just send that word. 3 people will see it. 3 people will know what to do." I tucked the folded paper into the clear pocket behind my library card, in the back of my wallet. I never told my father it existed. I checked that it was still there every Friday for 3 years. I never used the word. I never opened the paper either. I trusted my grandmother enough not to need to. Once a year at Thanksgiving, Joyce mentioned a cousin of my mother's named Felix. "The one who works for the government," she would say, casually, while passing the green beans. My father would nod without listening. He assumed Felix lived in Arizona. He didn't. Felix lived 22 minutes from our house. In a photograph from my mother's funeral taken at the cemetery, Felix is standing behind Joyce, slightly to the left, holding a manila folder against his chest. I had seen the photograph at least 100 times growing up. I had never asked Joyce what was in the folder. I assumed it was a program from the service. It wasn't. Inside that folder were the documents my mother had handed Felix from her hospital bed 3 days before she died. He had been holding them at the cemetery the way some people hold flowers. In October 2023, the same week my father married Brielle, Felix opened an internal audit flag on something at his federal office. Then, because my mother was his first cousin, he formally recused himself. The case was assigned to his colleague, a special agent named Dorian Wexler. Felix had been the family-side contact for 30 months. He had not been allowed to investigate. He had only been allowed to watch. My father met Brielle in the spring of 2022. They were dating by the time I was 10. He told me, in the kitchen one Saturday morning, that he wanted me to be open about her. I said okay. I didn't know yet that open was a word adults used to mean stop noticing. They were married in October 2023, in a venue with a vineyard and uplighting, at a final venue cost of $14,200. I wore a green dress Brielle picked. My mother's framed photograph stayed home that day, on the mantel, where she had been since 2020. I didn't know yet that the photograph would not stay there forever. The first time Brielle called herself New Mommy was a year later, October 2024, at my father's company picnic. I was 12. Her hand was on my shoulder. She said it loudly enough for one of my father's coworkers to hear. "And I'm New Mommy, right, Matilda?" I said, "Right." I had learned by then that saying anything else was loud, and loud was expensive. The Mother's Day card came in May of 2025, 2 weeks before Brielle announced that she was pregnant. I found it in the kitchen recycling, half buried under a Trader Joe's bag. The front of the card said, "To Mom." The inside said, "Love, Hudson." The handwriting was Brielle's. The baby it was signed from had not been born yet. He was barely a fact, much less a name. But she had bought herself a card from him and signed it in cursive. I stood at the recycling bin for a long time. Then I took a picture of the card with my phone and put it in a folder my grandmother had set up on my cloud account 2 years earlier, labeled Photos for Aunt Vivian, Recipes. The label was a joke. There were no recipes. The folder had been waiting for evidence. By April 2026, the folder had 217 images in it. Over the next 14 months, things began to go missing from the parts of the house that used to be my mother's. Her ceramic loon ornament, which we had hung on the Christmas tree every year of my life, didn't come out of the box in December 2025. Her photo album, the green leather one with the gold corners, left the bookshelf in January. The watch she had worn every day of my life, a thin gold Hamilton with a faded leather strap and the initials LCS engraved on the back, disappeared from her dresser drawer sometime in February. I knew about the engraving because I had memorized it when I was 10, the way I memorized other things in case I ever needed to prove they were hers. At Brielle's baby shower in February 2026, I saw a photograph in which Brielle was wearing the same Hamilton watch with a new leather strap. In a different photo, the back of the watch reflected in a serving tray. LCS. I zoomed in. I sent the screenshot to the cloud folder. I did not bring it up over cake. In March 2026, I saw a piece of paper I was not meant to see. My father had left a stack of mail on the kitchen counter, and a youth custodial account statement had slid out of an envelope. It was in my name, Matilda C. Savage. He had told me since I was 9 that my college savings were Doing fine. He said it every November, the way you say a thing you have memorized. According to the statement on the counter, the balance was $312. I photographed it before he came back into the kitchen. I uploaded it. I didn't say anything. I never said anything. That was the part my father liked about me. He thought it was obedience. It wasn't. In December 2025, an Audi Q5 appeared in our driveway, white, leather interior. My father told the neighbors it was a Christmas surprise for Brielle. He told his sister Carla on the phone that it was about time we had something nice. The monthly lease was $793. I knew because the lease document was on the kitchen mail tray for an afternoon, and the photo I took of an unrelated thing happened to capture the page edge. 22 minutes away, a man named Felix Calloway, who I had never met, was already looking at a copy of that same lease, pulled 3 weeks earlier under a federal subpoena. The framed photograph of my mother left the living room mantel for the first time in October 2024, about a week after Brielle first called herself New Mommy. It ended up in a hallway, on a small shelf, behind a vase. Within 2 days, I quietly carried it back to the mantel. I did not announce it. I did not argue. 2 months later, it left again. I put it back again. The third time, in late 2025, I found it face down on a tarp in the garage. I brought it inside. I put it back. The fourth time, the photograph did not come back to the mantel at all. It was on the floor of my own bedroom closet. I never raised my voice about any of it. I just kept putting her back. That was the part they couldn't forgive. One Saturday in early April 2026, 4 days before the room incident, I overheard Brielle on the phone with her own mother. She was in the kitchen. I was on the stairs. She said, "She acts like that woman still lives here. Damon's going to need to handle it." I went upstairs. I checked the folded paper in my wallet. The word Daisy was still there. I put my wallet back into my backpack. That was on a Saturday. The room would change on a Thursday. Thursday, April 16th, 2026, was the second to last Thursday in April. I was at my desk doing pre-algebra. I had a granola bar wrapper next to my elbow, the orange kind, and a worksheet with 22 problems left. I heard 2 sets of footsteps in the hallway. I did not look up. The door opened without a knock. I saw the red dot first. Not my father. The red dot in the corner of my stepmother's phone screen, the way it shows up in the reflection of a dark monitor. Brielle was holding the phone at chest height the way someone holds a small dog. She was smiling, not nervously, not apologetically. She was smiling the way a person smiles when they have already won. My father did not soften. He did not perform empathy. He did not even use his sales voice, the one he used at company picnics. He used a tone I had only heard him use once before, on the phone with a customer he had decided to lose. He said exactly what I will repeat to myself for the rest of my life. "Your mother is dead. Stop acting like this house still belongs to her ghost. The baby needs a real room. Pack your things and move to the storage room tonight." Brielle zoomed in. The red dot filled the screen of her phone. My eyes went up, to the wall above my bed, to the 3 pale blue words my mother had painted there, and then down to the worksheet on the desk. Tears came, briefly, quietly. Not because I was begging, because something inside me had registered the word ghost. Brielle, behind the phone, in a stage whisper aimed at the camera, said, "Look at her trying not to cry." My father took a piece of paper out of his back pocket. He set it on my desk in front of me. It was a moving schedule. He had typed it himself. Brielle had laminated it. He had taken the time to laminate it. He nodded toward the hallway. "Now," he said, "tonight. Let's go look at it." I stood up. I did not speak. I walked. The phone followed. The storage room was at the end of the hallway, past the linen closet on the right. It was 80 square feet. The floor was concrete with a thin square of remnant carpet laid over the middle of it, not glued down. The water heater hummed in the corner closest to the door. The breaker box was on the wall directly above where a bed would go, if you put a bed in there. There was no window. There was a frosted vent near the ceiling, the kind you find in a laundry room. There was no smoke detector inside the room. The smoke detector was in the hallway, 12 feet away. Brielle stepped inside ahead of us. She filmed the corners. She filmed the floor. She filmed the water heater up close. She filmed the spot where the bed would go. She narrated as she filmed, the way a real estate agent narrates a virtual tour. "Look," she said. "There's even room for a cot." The phone tilted up to my face. She zoomed in again. "Look at her," she said. "She's not even arguing." I spoke once. Low even, the way you ask a stranger for directions. "Is this safe?" My father's tone snapped. "Matilda, don't make this hard. Don't be dramatic. You're acting like a child." Brielle picked up the line for her audience. "Time to grow up, sweetheart. Time to grow up and make space for the real family." She said it twice. Once for me, once for the camera. My father pushed the laminated moving schedule into my hand. "Tonight," he said. "We want it done before Hudson's bedtime tomorrow." I took the schedule. I did not look at it. I did not look at my father. I did not look at the phone. I walked back down the hallway, past the linen closet, past the bathroom, into the room that had been mine for 14 years. The phone followed me. I did not scream. I did not beg. I did not slam the door. I opened my closet. I lifted a stack of folded sweaters from the shelf. I set them on the bed. My mother had taught me, years before any of this, that there are moments where the only thing you can afford to give them is your silence. This was one of those moments. Brielle in the doorway, still filming. She's being so mature about this. I picked up the wooden box from the top of my dresser. I put it into my school backpack before any clothing. I zipped it. The zipper sound was the loudest thing in the room. Brielle stopped the recording at 4:22 p.m. She typed the caption. She did not hesitate over the words. She had been writing the caption in her head for weeks. "Time to grow up and make space for the real family." She hit send. The video uploaded in 11 seconds. If you've ever been the older child told to be mature while the adults around you were the ones not behaving like adults, type the word mature in the comments. I want to see how many of us were taught that the same way. We're not done. The phone is still recording. There were 12 people in the family group chat. 7 of them I had met 3 times in my life. 2 of them were my mother's college friends. 1 of them was my Aunt Vivienne. 3 of them were on my father's side. The other 2, I would later learn, were people Brielle had quietly added the previous fall. I did not see the video go in. I did not see the reactions hit. I did not look at my own phone. I would see all of it later, in screenshots, with timestamps that have not left me. At 4:23 p.m., my cousin Trent typed, "LOL, she looks so over it." At 4:24 p.m., my father's Aunt Pearl typed, "Trooper energy. The real family needs that room more." She used the phrase, "the real family," without quoting Brielle, just used it, as if she had always thought of us that way. She had just doubled the receipt in writing. The phrase that came out of my stepmother's mouth was now in print, from a second adult, in a chat with 12 witnesses. At 4:24 p.m., my father's sister Carla, who lived in the next state, replied with 3 heart eye emojis and 1 full sentence. "Adolescents need to learn humility. She'll thank you in 10 years." She did not know yet that her own car would be in our driveway before sunrise on Friday. She did not know yet that she would be the one to take Hudson out of his crib and drive him away from his mother. Carla, in April 2026, was still the laughing aunt. At 4:25 p.m., my father's distant cousin Lorraine typed 8 words. "Wait, is that the storage room? Where the breaker box is?" 90 seconds later, she deleted the message. She did not delete it from the server. She did not know that you couldn't. At 4:24 p.m., my mother's college friend Inez Pierce, who Brielle had assumed had left the chat years ago, screenshotted the video and forwarded it to my grandmother Joyce with a single line. This is now. My grandmother read it at 4:24 p.m. She had been ready for that video for 2.5 years. At 4:27 p.m. in the family group chat, my mother's sister, my Aunt Vivienne, typed exactly one word. She sent it without a follow-up message. The word was documented. My father, when he saw it on his phone in the kitchen, read it as supportive. Brielle, when she saw it on the cracked sofa with Hudson in her arms, read it as supportive. They did not understand the difference between documented and good job. At the same minute, Vivienne sent a private message to me. It was a single character, a daisy emoji. I was sitting on the floor of my bedroom. I was reaching into my school backpack for the wooden box I had just put inside it. My phone vibrated once. I looked at the screen. I saw the daisy. I knew what to do next. The 3 women on my mother's side of the family had been waiting 6 years for that emoji to mean anything. None of them had wanted to need it. The 2 of my mother's friends who had been left in the chat by accident, Beatrice Calloway, no relation, same surname coincidence, and Inez Pierce, who had already forwarded the video, were silent in the chat itself. They did not type. They did not react. They were not waiting. They had already moved. By 4:30 p.m., both of them had called Joyce. I did not know any of this in real time. I knew only the daisy emoji. I knew only that my hands were steady. I knew that my mother had taught me what to do. I started taking photographs. I sat down on the rug of the bedroom that, at 4:30 p.m., was still mine. I unfolded the paper that had been in the back of my wallet for 3 years. I had never opened it. Joyce had given it to me at the diner with the red booths when I was 11. I had checked it was still there every Friday since. I had assumed the word daisy was the entire message. It wasn't. Under the word, in handwriting I had not seen since 2020, was a list of rules in my mother's handwriting. The slanted D, the tidy lowercase a, the way she made the letter G, with the loop closing in instead of out. I had not seen her handwriting in 6 years. The rules were short. I read them out loud, in my head, the way a person reads a prayer. Don't argue. Don't cry where the phone can see you. Don't post. Don't slam doors. Pack what you actually need. Photograph the room. Use the cloud folder. When you are ready, send the word. At the bottom, in smaller letters, if they go for the room, they will go for the rest. She had known. She had known 6 years ago. She had not been alive long enough to see Brielle, or Hudson, or the laminated moving schedule. But she had known, the way she had known about cancer before the doctors did, that some men do not stay generous. I stood up. I began to photograph. I took 14 photographs, the wall above my bed, with the painted phrase in afternoon light, the bookshelf, the desk, the moving schedule on the desk, laminated edge in the frame, the hallway door, the handle of the storage room, the interior of the storage room, the breaker box, the water heater, the concrete floor, the absent window, the smoke detector 12 feet away in the hallway, the frosted vent at the ceiling, the remnant carpet. I uploaded them one by one to the cloud folder my grandmother had set up in 2023, the one labeled Photos for Aunt Vivienne. Recipes. Each upload took a few seconds. The folder showed me 3 red exclamation icons in succession. Someone was opening the files in real time, then another, then a third. 3 people were watching the storage room with me. 3 people were inside my afternoon. I had not been alone for any of it. I had only thought I was. I went back to my bedroom. I lifted the wooden memory box off my dresser. Inside, I knew, was a sealed envelope marked "Open only with Grandma," a small house key on a brass ring, my mother's last note, and a manila envelope labeled SSA. For you, when you are ready. I had never opened the manila envelope. Joyce had said I would know when. I did not open it then. I put the whole box into my school backpack. I zipped the backpack. The zipper sound was, again, the loudest thing in the room. At 5:09 p.m., I sat cross-legged on the concrete floor of the storage room. The water heater hummed 2 feet from my left elbow. I held my phone in both hands. I typed 9 words. Daisy, 5:09 p.m. He took my room. She filmed it. Storage room, no window. Photos in folder. I sent it to 3 contacts at once. Joyce, saved as Grandma. Vivienne, saved as Aunt V. And a third number that had been saved in my phone for 2.5 years as Mr. Marsh. School project. All 3 reply bubbles appeared at the same moment. 3 typing indicators. 3 marks on my screen. They replied with the same 5 words. On our way, stay put. I sat there with my phone in my hands. I did not stand. I did not turn off the lights. I had folded 1 shirt in my bedroom. I had not begun to pack in earnest. The phone, by then, had stopped recording me. Brielle had gone back to the nursery. My father had gone back to the kitchen. I had been forgotten, briefly, for 14 minutes, the way they had been forgetting me for the better part of a year. At 5:24 p.m., my father poked his head into the storage room doorway. He saw me on the floor with 2 folded sweaters next to me. He saw the photograph wall in the doorway behind me. He saw a girl doing exactly what he had asked. See? He said. You're handling this great. I nodded. I did not look up. He left. In the nursery, Brielle called down the hall. Honey, Hudson is fussing. Come help. Before I tell you who pulled into our driveway, pause for 1 second and tell me where you think they came from. Family lawyer? A grandmother? Sheriff? Type your guess. Not because anyone's keeping score. Because I want you to remember what you thought before you find out. I will tell you what was happening in 3 rooms 3 miles away while I folded sweaters. At my grandmother Joyce's kitchen table, 45 minutes north of our house, every printout from the last 6 years had been spread out in 3 rows. 5 Form SSA 623 reports my father had signed each November, claiming he had used my benefits for housing, food, clothing, and educational maintenance of the minor child. Bank statements, lease agreements, wedding invoices, Pottery Barn receipts. Joyce was on the phone with Felix. She was reading my new photographs out loud to him, one by one, the way a nurse reads off vitals. Storage room, water heater, breaker box, no window. The breaker box, Felix. She photographed all of it. Felix said, Joyce, I'm signing out the vehicle. I'll be there in 19 minutes. At the SSA office of Inspector General Regional Field Office, 22 minutes from our house, Felix Calloway was on a second phone with his special agent in charge. He was the flagging agent on my representative payee account. He had not been allowed to investigate. The investigating agent was a man named Dorian Wexler, who had been quietly building the file since November 2023. 48 bank exhibits. 5 years of fraudulent rep payee reports. A timeline. A summary. The case had been prosecution ready for 6 weeks. Wexler was in Boston that night, testifying in an unrelated trial. Felix told his SAC, Sir, we have documented victim isolation now. I am the closest credentialed agent. I am the family contact. I am asking for authorization to make a welfare contact only. I will not interview. I will not collect statements. I will preserve evidence and transfer the minor to next of kin. The SAC said on speakerphone 3 words. Approved. Protective only. Wexler is read in. Get her out. Felix grabbed the credential wallet. He grabbed his coat. Navy blue, with the gold-on-blue OIG embroidery above the chest pocket. He left the case file in Wexler's office, where it belonged. He did not bring anything else. At Marsh and Holloway, PC, 6 minutes from the SSA field office, my mother's family attorney Theodore Marsh was already moving. He had been on standby for 30 months. He answered Joyce's call on the first ring. He asked her, "Do I bring the trust file or the rep payee file?" Joyce said, "Both." Marsh took his briefcase down off the shelf, slid 2 manila folders into it, and put on a tweed coat that was slightly too warm for April. He met Felix at the loading dock at 5:35 p.m. They drove together in Felix's Ford Explorer. Joyce drove behind them in her Subaru. She had wanted, she would tell me later, to be in her own car when she pulled in. She did not want to look like the federal agent. She wanted to look like a grandmother. Inside the Explorer, Marsh said, very quietly, "Felix, when Damon opens the door, please do me one favor. Don't smile." Felix said, "I wasn't going to." They turned onto our street at 5:58 p.m. The dashboard clock was the only thing in the car that knew the time. Inside our house, my father heard tires. He did not look up at first. We lived on a quiet street. Tires were normal. Then he heard a second set of tires. Then a third. Joyce's. 15 seconds behind. He walked to the front window. He pulled back the curtain. He saw 2 cars and a woman walking up the curb from a third. He saw Joyce's Subaru first. That was fine. That was Joyce. She came over sometimes. Then he saw the Ford Explorer next to her. Black, clean, parked with intention. He saw the license plate. He saw the embossed seal. He could not read the agency name on the plate from inside the house, but he knew what a government plate looked like. He had grown up on television like the rest of us. He said, low, into the kitchen behind him, "Brielle, come here." Brielle came, holding Hudson on her shoulder, half asleep. "What is it? Whose car is the black one?" The doorbell rang. The camera Brielle had installed the previous September to monitor when I came home from school each day captured the man standing on the porch in 3-second intervals. Dark coat, federal credential wallet folded in his right hand. 3 letters embroidered in gold above the chest pocket. OIG. He had not introduced himself yet. He did not need to. My father opened the door. He started to say, in a tone that was already cracking, "Joyce, this isn't really a good—" Felix did not let him finish. He stepped forward. He raised the federal credential wallet to eye level. He spoke at a measured pace, the way you would read a verdict to a jury. "Mr. Savage, I'm Special Agent Felix Calloway, United States Social Security Administration, Office of Inspector General. I'm here in a protective capacity to make a welfare contact regarding the minor beneficiary in this household. The investigating agent on your representative payee account, Special Agent Dorian Wexler, is in Boston tonight. I am here in his stead. May I come inside?" My father did not answer. His mouth was open. The word he was visibly trying to make was investigating. He could not get past the second syllable. Joyce did not wait. She stepped past Felix into the entryway. Marsh stepped past Joyce. Marsh set his manila folder on the small entry table. Gently, the way you set down something heavier than it looks. Joyce looked past my father, into the house, in the direction of the hallway. She said one sentence. Where is she?" My father said, She's in the back. She's fine." Joyce said, "In the storage room." My father said, "It's temporary." Joyce said nothing. She did not need to. The word temporary was doing all the work she would have done. Felix opened the manila folder Marsh had brought. He did not touch any federal evidence. The federal evidence stayed in Wexler's office, in Wexler's secure cabinet. Felix gestured only at Marsh's documents. He spoke directly to my father. "Mr. Savage, the assigned investigator has been on your representative payee account for 30 months. The file is at the field office. We are here tonight, in a different capacity, because the minor was photographed in a non-habitable space at 5:11 p.m. today. That makes this a welfare matter. Special Agent Wexler will contact you separately." From the living room doorway, my stepmother lifted her phone to film. Reflex. Habit. The same habit that had given her the video earlier that afternoon. Vivienne, who had walked up from her car parked at the curb, stepped into the entryway and looked at her. She did not raise her voice. "Brielle." Put the phone down. You're already in the file. Brielle's grip loosened. Her phone slid out of her hand. It hit the hardwood at an angle. The screen cracked across the diagonal. Hudson did not wake up. The phone, which had filmed me an hour and 50 minutes earlier, was the same phone that had filmed her bridal shower, her gender reveal, and her own Mother's Day card to herself. It had stopped working. Its screen was nothing but a spiderweb. Marsh, without looking up, slid one document forward on the entry table. Page 1, please, Mr. Savage. Your most recent SSA 623 form, signed by you on November 14th, 2025. My father looked. He saw his own signature. He saw the line. Funds used for housing, food, clothing, and educational maintenance of the minor child. Marsh slid a second document next to it. It was a photograph. The water heater, the breaker box, the concrete floor. The timestamp at the bottom corner read, 5:11 p.m. today. Marsh said very quietly, "Would you like to amend the form, Mr. Savage?" My father did not amend. He did not speak. He looked at the photograph. He looked at the signature. He looked at the folder. The color left his face the way it leaves a body. He went the color of paper. He did not turn to Felix. He did not turn to Marsh. He did not turn to Joyce. He turned toward the hallway and shouted, "Matilda, Matilda, come here, please. Honey, please." The please was the part that startled me. He had never said please, not in 14 years. I picked up the wooden box. I held it against my chest. I walked out of the storage room. I walked down the hallway, slowly, the way you walk through a place you are about to leave. I stopped at the end of the hall. I looked at Joyce, not at my father. Marsh did not raise his voice once. He opened the folder fully on the entry table. On the top page, in 14-point font, the number that had taken 6 years to add up was waiting in plain English. Total documented misappropriation, $151,200. He said, $2,100 a month. For 72 months. None of it spent on her. Brielle, from the bottom step of the staircase where she had now sat down, whispered, "That's not possible." Marsh turned the page. He pulled out the youth custodial account statement my father had told me. Every November of my life was doing fine. Marsh did not speak directly to me. He spoke directly to my father. He spoke the way a teacher reads a wrong answer aloud. You told her every November that her college savings was doing fine. This is what fine was. $312. She is 14. My father's voice cracked. I was going to put it back. Marsh did not respond to that sentence. He laid down 3 more documents. He explained evenly that these were civil parallels, his own exhibits, obtained over the years through his subpoena power as administrator of my mother's estate. He told my father that Special Agent Wexler had identical traces under federal subpoena, kept at the field office, not on this table. Marsh's set was for the family. Wexler's set was for the United States. He named them aloud. Audi Q5 lease, $793 per month. Paid from the representative payee account beginning January 2026. Wedding venue final balance, October 2023. $14,200. Paid from the representative payee account. Nursery furniture and renovation, February through March 2026. Total $9,800. Paid from the representative payee account. He paused. He looked at the photograph on the table, the one of the storage room. Audi. Wedding. Nursery. The same account that was supposed to pay for her braces in 2022. Which she did not get. The phrase "which she did not get" came out flat. Matter of fact. The way you read a balance sheet. Brielle, still on the bottom step, put her face in her hands. Felix, who had not spoken since the door, addressed her then. Not unkindly. The way you address someone who is about to drown. "Mrs. Savage, I want you to listen to me carefully because I am not at liberty to advise you. The card in your purse. The one ending in 0628. It accesses the representative payee account. Bank records under Special Agent Wexler's federal subpoena show 42 transactions on that card in the last 14 months. One of them is a Pottery Barn purchase, March 18th of this year. For a crib. You will want a lawyer of your own. Not your husband's. Yours. Tonight. Not tomorrow. Brielle did not look up. Her shoulders moved once. Damon, she said into her hands. Damon, what did you put me in? Marsh leaned forward, both hands flat on the entry table. He addressed my father one final time. Damon. The fraud was the long part. The storage room was the trigger. Title 42, Section 408. Misuse of survivor benefits. The November form said funds were used for her housing. The room you just gave her tonight is not housing. We have photographs taken from inside that room at 5:11 this afternoon. We have your wife's video, which has been preserved. Also from your own household. We have 12 relatives as witnesses. We have a state habitability code violation that any school counselor in this district would be statutorily obligated to report by the end of business tomorrow. He paused. He looked at my father directly. You did 6 years of damage on paper. You finished it in 12 minutes on camera. My father said nothing for a long time. His mouth moved twice. No sound came out. I had been holding the wooden box against my chest. I took one step forward. I did not look at my father. I looked at Joyce. I said one full sentence. The first one I had said all afternoon. Grandma, I would like to go with you tonight. Joyce held out her hand. I walked past my father in a straight line, the way you walk past someone you have decided is no longer in your life. I did not turn my head. I took my grandmother's hand. Her hand was steady. My hand was steady. My father said behind us, the only question he had left. Will I see her again? Marsh did not turn around. He said, very quietly, with the kind of professional restraint a man builds over 40 years of practice. That is not a question for me, Mr. Savage, and not in front of her. We walked out of the house. The Ford Explorer was still in the driveway. Felix was still inside, finishing what needed to be finished. Marsh would stay until 8 p.m. that evening. Vivienne would drive my stepmother's belongings to her mother's house the next day, separately, because Brielle had become a person who needed her own lawyer and could not afford to share rides with anyone in our family. I sat in the passenger seat of Joyce's Subaru. I opened the wooden box on my lap. I lifted out the manila envelope, the one labeled SSA. For you, when you are ready. I had never opened it. Joyce had said I would know when. I knew when. Inside the envelope was a letter from my mother, dated 3 weeks before she died. I did not read all of it that night. I read the first paragraph. The first line of the first paragraph was the only line I needed. My cousin Felix. He knows. You can trust him. If anything ever happens to my benefits for you, the first person to call is Felix Calloway. He works at the agency. He has been there since 2018. He has been told everything. I folded the letter back into the envelope. I looked out the window. The Ford Explorer was still in the driveway. The headlights off now. The cab light on. Felix was inside our house, standing in the entryway, looking at my father across a manila folder. Joyce did not start the car. She let me look as long as I wanted. I said finally, okay. She started the car. By 7:14 p.m. that evening, my Aunt Vivienne posted a single message in the family group chat. She wrote it from her car, parked at the curb of what used to be my house. What you saw earlier was a federally documented violation of a minor child's survivor benefits. Matilda is with her grandmother. Please preserve your messages and screenshots. They have been preserved on our end as well. She did not name the agency. She did not name the statute. She did not have to. The word federally was carrying everything. The chat went silent for 40 seconds. 40 seconds is a long time in a chat that had been alive with crying, laughing emojis at 4:23 p.m. the same afternoon. Then my Aunt Pearl, the one who had typed, The real family needs that room more, typed 4 question marks. Then she typed, Vivienne, I don't understand. Then she deleted both of them. Then she left the chat at 7:21 p.m. By 9 p.m., 8 of the 12 people in the chat had left. Cousin Trent deleted his entire chat history and his account. Vivienne told me later, when I asked her about it, that he had probably thought deletion was the same as not having said it. She said it gently, the way she said most things. Delete on a phone does not delete on a server. She told me that line in the kitchen of Joyce's house. I was eating a bowl of cereal at the time. I would not eat cereal again for 2 weeks. But that was unrelated. At 9:42 p.m., Inez Pierce, my mother's college friend, who had forwarded the original video to Joyce within 60 seconds of it being sent, called Joyce. Their conversation was 2 minutes long. At the end of it, Inez said one sentence. I overheard it through Joyce's open phone speaker. Lillian told us once, years ago, what Daisy meant. None of us thought she would ever have to use it. I was sitting at the kitchen table at Joyce's. I had a pen in my hand for some unrelated reason. When the call ended, I opened the wooden box. I turned the lid upside down. I wrote Inez's sentence on the inside of the lid, in pencil, in my own handwriting. I have never erased it. At 11:04 p.m., my stepmother Brielle received a text from her own mother, Allison Hollister, who had been in the family group chat for the last 2 years. The text was 8 words. Pack a bag, come home, bring the baby. Brielle, sitting on the entryway bench with her cracked phone face down beside her, read it in front of my father. She did not move. She did not pack. She sat there. Hudson slept on her shoulder through it. Friday, April 17th, 2026, was the morning my father's sister Carla appeared in the driveway in her old Volvo. She had driven through the night from the next state over, a 2.5-hour run on the interstate she had not made in 3 years. She had seen the video on her phone at 4:25 p.m. the day before. She had typed 3 heart eye emojis. She had typed, adolescents need to learn humility. She'll thank you in 10 years. Then, between the heart eye emojis and 8:30 a.m. Friday, she had had 10 hours to think about it. She walked in without knocking. She did not look at my father. She walked to the nursery. She picked up Hudson. She picked up the diaper bag. On her way out the door, she said one sentence to her brother. She did not break stride. You're handling this alone, Damon. Until you can show me you know what you actually did, you don't have a sister either. She put Hudson in his car seat. She drove away. My father stood in the doorway with the empty baby blanket in his hands. He stood there long enough for the neighbors across the street to notice. He stood there long enough for the morning paper carrier to slow down on the way past. Brielle packed at 11 a.m., a small overnight bag. The Audi Q5 backed out of the driveway at 11:12 a.m. She did not look at him. The Audi was gone, and so was the baby, and so was the sister, and so was the wife. And so, somewhere in the federal field office 22 minutes away, was Special Agent Dorian Wexler, returning from Boston with his case file under his arm, about to call the United States Attorney's Office. At 12:05 p.m. that Friday, a sheriff deputy pulled into our driveway. He was not there to arrest my father. He was there to serve a notice, a single envelope from the United States Attorney's Office, informing my father that the SSAOIG investigation had been formally referred for prosecution. The deputy handed him the envelope. The deputy left. My father carried the envelope to the kitchen island. He did not open it. It sat there for the rest of the afternoon. It was still there at sundown. I was not in the house for any of it. I was at my grandmother's kitchen table, 2.5 feet from a quilt I had not seen since 2020. I was eating toast. If you've ever stayed quiet through something you knew was wrong because you had been taught quiet was safer, type the word quiet in the comments. Not as a confession, as a record. We were trained that way for a reason, and some of us were trained well enough to use it. That Saturday afternoon, April 18th, I sat on a bed in my grandmother Joyce's spare bedroom. The spare bedroom had been set up for me, in some quiet way, for 2.5 years. There was a small dresser, a desk, a lamp shaped like a turtle that had been mine when I was 6 and had not been thrown out, a row of books I had borrowed in 2020 and never returned. There was a quilt folded across the foot of the bed. The quilt had been on my mother's hospital bed at the end. I had not seen it since June of 2020. I had asked Joyce 3 times when I was 9 where it had gone. Joyce had told me, each time, that it was being kept somewhere safe. I had stopped asking. On the nightstand was a photograph in a small wooden frame. My mother, age 30, holding me at 6 months. I had not seen the photograph since 2020 either. Joyce said, "It's been waiting." That was all she said. She closed the door. On Monday, April 20th, I went back to school. My counselor, Mrs. Holloway, called me into her office during second period. I had known her for 2 years. She was the one who had quietly flagged my missed dental appointments in 2024 and the pair of shoes I had worn through the soles of in October. She closed her office door. She did not turn on her computer. She did not pick up a pen. "You don't have to perform for me, Matilda. Just tell me what happened." I told her, in 8 sentences. She did not write anything down. She listened. When I finished, she said one thing. "Your grandmother told me you were brave." She was right. She walked me back to class. The school's mandated report to Child Protective Services had already been filed by then. It was a confirmation report, not a removal report. I was already safely placed. CPS would conduct a courtesy visit at Joyce's house the following week. They would close the file in 11 minutes. They had no work to do. The system had done the work without them. Wednesday, April 22nd, Felix called Joyce, in his capacity as family contact, not as investigator. The United States Attorney's Office had filed a criminal complaint against my father. The charges named in the complaint were 3. Title 42, Section 408, 18 U.S. Code, Section 641, 18 U.S. Code, Section 1028A. The third was aggravated identity theft. My father had used my Social Security number to sign every annual SSA 623 form, 5 Novembers in a row, the same number across 5 forms. He had used a child's identity to lie to the federal government 5 times in a row, and the federal government, it turned out, had been waiting for him to do it 5 times in a row. Felix said, "He'll be arraigned Friday. He'll likely surrender voluntarily." His attorney called the AUSA this morning. Joyce did not tell me Friday was Friday. She told me on Saturday morning, after it was done. His attorney, when he saw what Wexler had been quietly building since November 2023, did not advise a trial. There was no trial that would help him. The evidence was on tape. His own tape. The plea negotiation his attorney would later complete called for 30 months of federal incarceration, full restitution of $151,200 with interest, 3 years of supervised release, and a permanent prohibition from serving as a representative payee for any minor for the rest of his natural life. The sentencing date would fall later in the summer. That part of the story would not happen in April. Brielle, separately, retained her own attorney within 48 hours. Her mother paid. She cooperated fully with Wexler's office. She was not charged. By the end of the week, she had moved home permanently. She filed for separation that same week. I do not know what the conversation between her and her mother sounded like. I never asked. On Friday, April 24th, a letter arrived at Joyce's house. It was addressed to me. It was in my father's handwriting. The return address was the county jail intake. Joyce did not open it. She handed it to me. "It's your decision," she said. I held the envelope for a long time. The corners of it were soft. I did not open it. I walked to my new bedroom. I placed the envelope on a shelf next to the wooden box. I closed the door. I would, I told myself, decide later. There would be time. There would be a lot of time. The envelope sat on the shelf for the rest of April. It was still there at the start of May. It was still there at the end of May. It is, as I am telling you this, still there. By the last week of April 2026, the Social Security Administration had suspended my father's representative payee status pending the federal proceedings. My grandmother Joyce filed Form SSA 11, the application to become a successor representative payee. The remaining benefits owed to me, approximately $50,400 between the end of April and my 18th birthday, would resume to her stewardship once the appointment finalized. The restitution from my father would be garnished from his prison wages and, after that, from his future earnings for as long as either of us were alive. The day Joyce filed the SSA 11, Felix drove out to her house. He brought the paperwork. He sat at her kitchen table. He handed her the file. He said, "Your daughter paid into this her whole working life. This is what she paid into it for." He did not say your late daughter. He did not modify the noun. My mother had been working as a high school librarian since she was 24. She had paid Social Security taxes from every single paycheck. The system had received them. The system had kept her receipt. The system had given them back to me, 6 years after she stopped existing, the way she had told her cousin Felix it would. Joyce put the SSA 11 paperwork in the drawer where she kept my mother's last will. The same week, I asked her if I could paint the wall above the bed in my new bedroom. She handed me a small can of pale blue, the same pale blue my mother had used in 2020. Joyce had kept a quart of it, sealed, in her basement for 6 years. I did not ask her why she had kept it. I knew why. I painted 3 words. They were not my mother's 3 words. My mother had written, "You belong here." I wrote in my own slanted handwriting in my own hand on my own wall, "I belong here." It was not a tribute. It was an inheritance. I stepped back. I closed the bedroom door from the inside. The room was 81 square feet, larger than the storage room by exactly 1 square foot. There was a window. There was a smoke detector. There was no water heater. There was no breaker box. There was a desk and a quilt and a photograph in a wooden frame. I am older now than I was when this happened. I am old enough to be telling you about it. My father took my room because he thought I would be small enough to fit into the leftover space. He took my mother's money because he thought no one was watching. He was wrong about the watching. He was wrong about me. He was wrong about almost everything that mattered. A house is not a room. A family is not a roster. A mother is not a body in the ground. The first time I said okay that Thursday, it was the only word I could afford to give him. The last word I needed, I gave to myself. I painted it on a wall.